Call to order the Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, October 22nd. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
A second?
Second.
Your votes, please. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First tonight, we're going to have a technology update from Maya McDowell from ESU 5. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, great.
I'm Ryan McDowell. I'm Director of Technology at ESU 5. This is David Kamara and Mitch Owens. They also help here at Beatrice and some of the other ESU 5 schools as well. We're just going to give you a basic overview of some of the things we've found and some of the things we've fixed and kind of the current status of technology right now. So David's going to kind of give you a little presentation.
Okay, so again, I'm David Kamara. I'll probably be the one working here a little bit most. I work at part-time at Fairbury, and then I work here at Beatrice. And these other guys, they have their other schools too. So you'll probably see me more often walking around the building, fixing things around here. This little presentation I gave us about a month ago to the admin team. So I'm just doing a quick little rundown of some things we've worked on in the summer, how things are looking right now, and a little bit of what we want to do in the future. Kind of go from there. So summer projects, some security concerns we've seen, future goals and recommendations. Okay, in the summer, we went over, when we walked into this place, we kind of went to all the network racks and looked at where all everything is kind of thing. We did some updating to all your switches, majority of the switches and everything to increase speeds throughout the building, kind of stuff like that, updated all that stuff. So we increased the network speed from 1 gigabit to 10 gigabit in certain places. Some places are still, a couple places we still have to fix the fiber connection that does the signal, needs to be updated, and we've had some issues with that. Things we want to do, we've done a little bit of this already, clean up and organize racks. I'll show you some pictures of that. Problems with fibers at the middle school. When we were doing that 10 gig connection, increasing the speed, we've had some issue in the middle school where we were losing connection from the internet just because it was going so fast, and the old wires throughout that building just can't handle those speeds, so we have to kind of lower some areas back to 1 gig. In some places, just when before we got here, they got a number of switches for each building, how many needs. Some of that was just under evaluate kind of thing, so there's a few places that need some updated switches still. So there's some things that we walked into and we took over some places. The far one and the far right, after we cleaned it up a little bit. You know, in elementary schools, those ain't too, you know, it's kind of hard to find things, but then we have the middle school one. It's that picture on the far left over there where all the wires are everywhere. We've kind of cleaned it up again, and then the far right one is how we cleaned it up. So that way we can, all those things are labeled, like every room or where all the internet's going or what wire's powering what machine. So when you kind of walk into these rooms and they're like, hey, my internet doesn't work here, and we look at it, it's like, whoa, you know, where to start. So we've kind of cleaned that up, so now if there is an issue in a 102 or a certain room, everything's labeled and we can get to that stuff a lot quicker and easier. This was our big project this last Friday we just did. So this is your high school, that far left picture. That was the high school that we walked into when we took over. And it's like, hey, fix the internet in my room. Okay, good luck. You know, so this is what we just did this Friday without buying any new equipment. It's still not perfect, but we're using the stuff we had. We were able to clean it up, and again, we have it organized generally where the wires are going so we can find things a lot easier. And that one we just did this Friday. Printers, they updated all the printers in here, all the big multi-format printers from your EECS contract over at Capital. I think they added 26 new ones. So 26 printers. There's 2 print servers that I consolidated down to 1. And again, that's just to simplify things. There were a lot of stuff, just to get not too complicated, but there were a lot of servers. Like there's some places where you have 6 servers doing the job that 1 machine could do. And it just makes it so complicated for Cheryl and James trying to figure out where all these things are going because it just complicated, doesn't need to be that way. So we're going to start consolidating some of that stuff. So we started with the printers to say new ones. I just made a new print server, and we'll just have 1 managing all that. The way people print now, they just use their same Google account that they already use for their G Suite, so they don't need to have a separate account for printing and all this. It's just 1 local account, 1 local printer that we can manage. At some point, we'd like to talk about it, maybe situating printers in certain areas and in locations so there's not so many of them. Because throughout your whole district, I think it's 51 printers total. It's kind of crazy compared to other places I work at. And I know everyone needs to print, but sometimes when you take that printer away from being right next to them, it makes them think a little bit more about what they're printing also. So we got some of that we need to fix though, and just some minor things on some driver issues. We did a phone system too this summer. We also updated the phone system. So all that was old analog lines that we upgraded to all digital. We worked with Dia with that. That went pretty smoothly. I think that is finally completely switched over. I think it was just this last Monday where they took out the old phone system, so that's all switched over. There were a couple of rooms that needed wires ran to them. The main one's a fitness room, but we got that done too. So I think every room and all the phones are all up and running. So this one, I might spend a little more time on this just so you kind of know what happened. So I gave this briefing about a month ago. So early September this happened, where one of the servers out there, like I said, there's so many different servers, and there's no way we could find all those when we just walked in here in July. One of those apparently was open out to the internet, like it's the whole world. Anyone can get to it. So this was your Destiny, your book server kind of thing. This was open to the whole world, and this fun guy showed up, where it's like, oh, I want to execute payload.exe. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And then we found out this thing was that ransomware, the fun ransomware that's going around with it, attacks hospitals and cities, all this stuff. And schools are becoming more of a target for that, especially with all this remote learning going on. So this happened, and it started encrypting a lot of the files and backing up stuff. Luckily, we caught it right away, and we were able to restore from a backup, and that kind of prevented it. And then we caught that server, and we blocked it out just to what it needed. It only needs to be accessed in here for kids to get their books and stuff like that. But also, we just switched this over. Destiny just switched over to hosting. So it's hosted on by the company that runs it themselves. So it's not actually physically here. So that kind of saved that. But we've kind of double checked on that, and I think I have some other stuff about that. Just some other security things I think. Just so many servers, so it makes it hard to manage. Like there's no way anyone can manage all those things. That they weren't updated for years. Like just simple security patches. Like every month there's a new patch that hey, some hacker figured out that you can get in through this way. Well, then Windows or Microsoft, they patch it, and then, hey, problem solved. But when you're not doing those updates, you know, it's just wide open and people figure this stuff out. So we want to review some of those servers, update some machines. There were a lot of machines in the building, too, that were still using Windows 7. You can see Windows 7 ended support January 14th of this year. So when they say end of life or end of support, that means when Microsoft, if they know that a virus happened or there is a vulnerability, they're not fixing it anymore because it's end of life. It doesn't matter. So they're not patching it like they used to. So if those machines are still being used in the building and there are a few Windows 7s things, we'd like to get rid of them. Because it could just be a simple bug that, hey, gets out on the internet, everybody knows about it. If we can just patch it, we're good. So we'd like to update some of those machines just to get to Windows 10. And Windows 10's been out for, I think, 10 years already, something like that. So there's no reason not to be on Windows 10. And then we have some old servers too. Some of them we're going to consolidate. Some of them we're just going to get rid of because there's no need for them. We're just going to make another server do it, just to make it easier to manage. There are also some password issues. There are a lot of times where, and just to be honest, when I had this little key card to get into the door, I was like, I got tired of going to the high school. I want to get into your high school. All I had to do was flip over a couple of keyboards and I found a password to get to your door system. So I put myself on the door system. So we kind of changed that. Talk to people like, hey, you can't leave these passwords laying around. And then some people have passwords you shouldn't have them. So we changed some of those to not use default passwords. Some people had admin level privileges that there was no need for it. If you have a privilege, they can get the things they don't need to. So we consolidated that. And then just talking to people about their password use and stuff like that. So some things we want to do, we talk about consolidate servers, update end-of-life devices. So we talked about all that stuff. Oh, one thing too, the Z drives, that's another big project coming through. There's a lot of Z drives, so that's the shared network drives where teachers and everybody store all their information. So that stuff's being stored here. There's one machine here storing it, there's a machine at the high school storing all the data for like just teachers, classes, and all the information they want to save. Those machines are getting old. They're going to need to be updated at some point. So we're talking about using Google Drive. This is a G Suite school, so you're all using the Google stuff. You have free unlimited storage. Why buy new machines for like $20,000, $30,000 when we have free unlimited storage? So we're going to start migrating teachers over to the free Google Drive. It does the backups automatically. It's secure on Google's side. Is it perfect? Does Google Drive go down sometimes? Sure. Could that ever get hacked? Possibly. And they can never be 100%. But Google has the engineers and technicians that we just don't have. Let them manage that. It's free. It's part of your G Suite for your school. So we'll probably be switching that over sometime in December, or at least by the end of this year. All right.
Let me talk about, so that crypto locker is, so if you guys all remember when the city of Beatrice actually got hit with one and it locked down all our files. This is the exact same thing. And we can talk about it now openly just because of the way everybody responded quickly. It happened at 8:06 in the morning, and within like a couple hours we knew exactly what happened and we had it mitigated. So everybody was working together. We figured out what it was. We found it was on one server. that server hadn't been affected as bad as another one that we found on the network. So we had actually 2 servers that got hit. The second server actually got encrypted, locked all the files. This could have been catastrophic to the district. We could have locked every file in the district, and we would have either had to pay the ransom or just lost all the files. But we had backups in place. We found out what it was, locked it down to the outside, and restored from backup, and nobody noticed hardly. It's when you hear ransomware, it's the worst thing as a tech person you want to hear is ransomware. Like that's the worst case scenario. But we came out pretty unscathed really. So this is a success that we can talk about, and we learned a lot from it to see like, okay, what was open to the world, what security measures, what updates, what kind of things do we need to do to prevent this from happening again. So I just wanted to say that it was a success with everybody working together as fast as we found it and I guess restored from backup. So backups are key in that piece. So I just wanted to say that piece there. So.
Okay, just so goes, so this is the last one here, just some things I'm looking to push, maybe, not this year, maybe next year, sometime in the future, things I'd like to accomplish. We'd like to improve the communication between, the tech team you have here, the ESU, the staff you have in the building, all this, just everyone, how tech goes across each building, each classroom. Tech training for staff, I think that would be the biggest one. The biggest one that will solve a lot of issues. There's a lot of, and not trying to, but compared to other schools I work in, some of the simple things, like the staff is not where they need to be in today's level when it comes to technology. And some of that's just equipment, so simplifying the classroom, the tech. There's some classrooms I go to where they have a setup kind of like this. And even me, if I first walk in here, I gotta sit here and think about where every connection's going, how do I get to my projector, how do I do this? There's ways to simplify that, and probably update some, got some old projectors in classrooms too that probably need to be updated, that can update with their new computers to make things a simple, hey, as soon as I go in my classroom, I should turn my computer on and everything's set up. I shouldn't have to get the tech out every time I want to share my screen or something like that. Implement device one-to-one. At some point, you already have the devices, like almost every classroom has enough Chromebooks for every kid. At some point, I'm not sure, compared to all our other districts, I think this is the only one that is not completely, one-to-one yet. So at some point, we'd like to implement that.
One-to-one taking them home.
Taking them home, yeah. And then that will eliminate some things like, hey, there's no need for so much printing when every kid's got a machine. You don't need to print things when you can do all your assignments online or just submit it through your Chromebook. Some of your computer labs, some of them we might have to keep still for your CAD and some of the more end video design at the high school and stuff, but other things you could probably start removing your labs so you don't have to update those labs every, 7-10 years. And then another one, just at some point maybe we'll do these key cards. You can do these RFID cards to do door access, to do printing, to do timing, when they clock in and out. You can do it all through one of this card that will identify who that person is. So we might do something like this. We do it at the issue, I do it at Fairbury, I do everything. If I want to print something, it's through my card. I want to open a door, it's through my card. If I don't clock in, but the teachers who do, they do it all through their card. So that's something we could probably implement at some point. I think that's the last one. I know you guys got a lot to do, but if you have questions, we could probably do fun for a couple of minutes, but if you ever need to find us, I'm sure they know how to get a hold of us. You can find our stuff at the ESU too. All of our information's on there if you ever need a hold of us for anything or if you have questions.
One more thing I want to touch on too is he mentioned how we took the speeds in the district from 1 gig to 10 gigs, so 10 times the speed between all buildings. We ran into some issues at the middle school with the fiber that is currently there. It's old enough where pushing that much speed across it doesn't work. So we had a bunch of switches dropping throughout the day, so people's internet was going down. And once we swapped it back down to a slower speed, it was okay. But next year, the E-rate cycle restarts for another 5 years. So you guys will have $315,000 worth of E-rate dollars for Category 2 equipment. That covers switches, wireless, wiring, fiber, anything that you want to do networking-wise in the district. So that resets for another 5 years. So we took advantage of that and replaced all the switches with that. All your wireless. So all of that is good for a while, but the next focus could be wiring and getting some of that updated. So, any questions? I know we threw a lot at you really fast. So try not
This
to.
is impressive. I think this partnership is one of the best things we've done in a really long time. It's great.
It helps when we have a lot of schools that we see. Once you learn once, it's easy to replicate it across the districts. And, it saves us a lot of time. And like that, when we hit that that ransomware. I was the only one in the office. Everybody else was out in districts. We found it. We were all on chat, working together. I mean, we were all working remotely, and I mean, we had it knocked down quickly. So
That's the thing. Sometimes when you're just one building, yeah, you do get stagnated. You're like, oh, I've always done it this way. And you just can't be like that in tech, you know? And that helps when we're in different schools. Like, oh, how's this school doing it? Is that something I can do at my school? And, you know, just learning from a bunch of different people. Even when I'm at Fairbury, I'm learning from a tech director there and how they do it there. So, yeah, we get to pick a little bit from every other school. And is everything I do at Fairbury going to work? No, it's not. You know, it's a bigger district here. There's other problems that we don't face there. But even then, you know, even not outside of our issue, we work with the issue 6, see some of their schools, see all the other things, just see what everyone's doing and try different things. So.
No, it looks fantastic. Thank you very much for all
Yep.
you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate you guys coming tonight, and we could try to explain this, but it wouldn't be nearly as good as how they explain it and the things that they're doing. So that's why we asked them to come and kind of give an update. They did it for our administrative team and our tech team as we had our last meeting together, and so we felt it was nice, it'd be nice for you guys to see this, and appreciate what you guys are doing here.
And we did a lot this last summer between the new switches, new phones, new copiers. You know, there's some things we'd like to do, and hopefully, I'm probably ask you, hey, can we do this? But it won't be that much stuff. It'll be like, hey, can we do this a little bit? Yeah, that was a lot for us. That was three summer projects we normally do over a summer. We did it in like a month.
I never want to do that again. Just
Yeah, right. So how, no, yeah, hopefully we can focus on the little things now.
yeah, all the big key core components are pretty much replaced. So yeah.
I think one of the big pieces you hit on was the professional development, tech professional development for staff. I think that's something that we've come to realize is one of the key factors. We've got to figure out how to make that happen. So we'll be talking to you about suggestions for that too. All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, next, something we haven't heard very much about. COVID update, Mr. Alexander, Dr. Nielsen.
All right, yeah, and I do want you to know that I'm sorry we continue to bring this topic up, and it seems like we beat a dead horse, but we'll try and be brief but concise tonight. It's interesting that with every week that goes by, we learn something a little more, we have a little better understanding of what we're dealing with, but there's still that level of uncertainty and level of, for every one thing that we think might sound a little bit logical, we find out the next day it may not be completely logical. So we deal with all that, but we're continuing to look at ways to adjust in a proactive action versus a reactive action. And when you're dealing with something that's completely unknown, that's hard to do. So, but we're also talking, like they said, and collaborating with a lot of other schools on things that they're doing. And one thing that we're seeing other schools do, especially larger schools with more student diversity, which also results in more gatherings, more opportunity for students to be in different scenarios or bigger super spreader events, is adjust their calendar. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about some of the calendar adjustments that are out there, and throw some ideas out and let you know what we're thinking about as we see this evolve. And one of the things that we see is that as we come closer to the holidays, that's something everybody's concerned about. Halloween and what super spreader events will be available at Halloween for kids and families, and those are things we don't want to be in conflict with, but we also have to think about the backside of them and how they impact what we're doing in school. So as we approach that holiday, we've had great cooperation with everybody in terms of what they're doing and families and so forth. As we approach Thanksgiving, one of the concerns is the time we have off at Thanksgiving, and people will travel. We're not asking people not to do that. We understand people are going to do that to a certain extent to see family. You can't ask them not to. So the question is, how do we respond to that coming back? And a couple of schools that we've been talking with and following, and other schools in our area are considering, is the week after Thanksgiving, making that a remote learning week in order to give the virus a chance to breathe and give us a chance to see what happens as people return from that holiday, if they do travel and they go spend time with family. How much of the virus will we see returning back to Beatrice or back with those families. So, thank you. So we're looking at that, and we're really looking hard at that week after Thanksgiving is making it a remote learning week to give us the chance to analyze what the impact is going to be. And so, as we do that, we want to make you aware of it and open it up for discussion. Is there anything you'd add to that that I missed?
Then I think we would look at the 7th through the 18th of going in-person learning, so getting the kids back in school. Because we know that with anything, our goal is to keep kids in school, and that's the best learning. So we want to make sure that we keep them in school for as long as we possibly can, but bring them back the 17th through the 7th through the 18th of December. And then there's that week that we were supposed to be out of school, come back that Monday and Tuesday, and then have break start on that Wednesday. The state commissioner has sent out guidance that he is allowing more professional development time for teachers during this point in time. Just to continue to develop plans for remote learning, to continue to develop an understanding of how to teach, and how to interact with students remotely, and how to assess remotely, and how to do those other things. So what we would like to do is use that 21st and 22nd as professional development time. So we know that if we have to go to tier 3 or tier 4 anytime, we're going to have to apply for a waiver with the state with instructional minutes. We know that that's going to happen. And we will have to apply for the waiver with our preschool, we'll have to apply for the waiver with our K-12. So this would be a part of, with this PD, we would have to apply for a waiver with instructional minutes, because we probably would be fine in meeting our instructional minutes, but we kind of deviated from our plans, so we would want to just make sure that they know and that they are aware that we've done that. Plus with the remote learning, the 30th through the 4th, if we choose to do that, we would, either the learning has to be synchronous or we cannot count it. So my goal though is not to have students on Zoom for 6, 7 hours in a day. That is not okay. That is not okay for any of us. That's not okay for any child. And so what we are looking at is planning our schedules that are really creative, that go back to trying to work with families, because we also know that there are some kids that can't attend at 9 o'clock because they are at the YMCA, or they are at grandma and grandpa's house and grandma does not have access to the internet or does not have a device that can handle a Zoom. So those are some things that we already know that with any plan that we have, we're probably going to have to apply for a waiver with the state. So that is just one thing that we're looking at, but I think that December plan gives us some flexibility and allows for us to continue. We know family time is huge. We know families have to get together, and this is a special time of year that families do find time to gather and find time to meet, and so we do respect that as well, but we also want to make sure we keep our kids safe, we want to make sure we keep our staff safe, and kind of looking at a different schedule allows us to do that.
So you're proposing potentially a week after Thanksgiving for remote learning, an additional 2 days before Christmas, and then, or anything after Christmas break? Would you be adding another week of remote learning after that, or are you going to see how, if
Yep.
Thanksgiving works? Okay,
Yes,
Great question.
I think we want to wait and see.
okay.
That's the thing, is we don't want to get plans, and I think we've learned this from the get-go,
Yeah.
starting in June, and, we kind of make these plans, it's like, oh, maybe, we should have looked differently or thought differently. So, those are some of the things that we want to do is, okay, let's look at second quarter. We'll wait to kind of figure out where we are throughout December, because hopefully by December, maybe things are going the other direction. And, it would be awesome if it was. So that's where I think we need to write it out and wait a little bit longer to make that decision.
I think
No, I just said thank you. You can go.
one of the advantages, I think, of doing that week is we'll figure out if, like, the Chromebooks at the elementary have really worked and what the glitches are in a week, rather than if we're out for, an extended period of time and we won't have figured out what's working for those kids, what isn't, So I think that would be an advantage to it.
And I don't think we did a survey with Lincoln School after they did that 2 weeks stint. I don't think it would be a bad thing even to do a survey with our students after they do that 1 week of, okay, what went well? What did, what teachers did a great job and what did they do? Why was it great? You know, why did it work for you? Why were you able to continue learning? Why were you, what did you notice? So I think that is something that we could easily do with that too, just because in that'll guide that PD the 21st and 22nd. If for some odd reason in January we see the numbers spike more than they are right now, those are some things that we can continue to look at as to, well, here are some best practices. So let's take those and figure out how we can kind of utilize those across district. Good idea. Absolutely.
So that's one portion of what we're looking at in regards to the calendar options. Obviously, we want to discuss it with you tonight because as we move toward that, we need to make families aware of that as soon as we can so they can adjust their plans accordingly and everybody's up to speed on it. But I think it makes some sense in terms of what like I say, what we've learned over the course of the last 2 to 3 months dealing with this. And, I have it written down to say it later, but I'm going to say it now. I think one of the things that happened is in June and July, as we made these plans, we forgot to remember that we're going to write this plan up and it's going to look really good, but the virus doesn't really care. And so we've learned that we have to adapt to the virus as it comes in, not the virus adapt to our plan, because that's not going to happen. And I think this does have some logicality behind it. I can't tell you all the schools you're talking about these types of adjustments, but there are quite a few. I know there are some that have made the announcement about Christmas already, but I think we need to take a look at that first and see what's going to work for us.
Well, I would say, the sooner we make the decision, probably the better, so people can plan for daycare or whatever it may be for that week. I mean, I would say very soon, that way we have plenty of time for people to ramp up and make those decisions.
Well, tying in with the remote learning, at first, I talked to parents and asked them their opinions, what they thought about remote learning, all that stuff. And then I realized that really wasn't who I needed to talk to. So I've been talking to kids, actually. And just last week, I talked to, they were 2 brothers, and one's in middle school, one's in high school, and asked them what they thought about it, and actually got much better responses and answers from kids than from parents. And the kids don't really like remote learning, and they're usually pretty honest with me, and they're like, well, yeah, 'cause it's really hard to actually do anything, because there's no structure, and so they can get up and they can play PlayStation or just sleep in or do this, and they're not very motivated. And so most of them prefer to have, well, they would like to have something to where even if they're on Zoom, they see a homeroom teacher doing the whole thing. I mean, so they have to be, and they said they want breaks, but they want to be able to have to see somebody there instead of just 15 minutes with a Zoom thing. Because they're saying they even get stuff out, they hear other kids' questions. And a lot of kids do learn from hearing other people. Just like here, we'll hear somebody else ask a question or comment on something, and we're like, oh yeah. So that's some of the kids' biggest issues is you're just at home and you don't have any, and of course that gets back to the social aspect and the being in school and everything, but so that's something we need to be aware of when we're doing this, is how to keep the kids engaged all day long and type thing, so.
Because the other thing is we also need to make sure that they are still learning. We need to make sure that their grades do not fall, that they do not miss out, because they're still getting content that they need to know. So those are some things that I think we still have to be very cognizant of and very tracking completely as we're going through this. If I haven't heard from someone on day 1, I'm calling them day 2 saying, I missed you. Where are you at? What do you need? How can I help you? What can we do to make sure you're getting this? The other thing that we have talked about with the calendar options and with remote learning is that there still might be students inside our building.
Yes.
Our special education students, our EL students do need special services. And so we might bring them back, and it might only be for 2 hours, for 2.5 hours, but we might bring them back, it'll still be a small group. But we know that these students have some of our highest needs, and we need to make sure that they are met. So that is one of the things that we will continue to do. And we'll work with Mid-States to make sure that they have transportation as well, so that they can still get into the buildings with the mask on and come and learn with the teacher and still keep track and keep on top of things.
How about food service?
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Food service, absolutely. We will be doing food service with Dawn. And so, you know, the other thing that I know will come up as a question is kind of our paraprofessionals. Are they still expected to work? Absolutely. Because I know that we will need them on Zooms. There are sometimes where you have small groups in a special ed room and they're off working with a student one-on-one. They'll still be Zooming with that student, or they'll be in person with that child as well. They might be helping cleaning. So we'll have plenty of projects for them to do. The other thing is lunch. We'll need help with that as well. We have talked about this, and we do want to add a pick roll site because we didn't have that last time. And we know we have a lot of pick roll kids that missed out on that. So we want to make sure that they get the lunch as well. So yep, we're going to try to make it better this time.
Other questions?
Have you considered, of course I read this article you gave us on Elkhorn, the additional work days for teachers?
That would be the 21st and 22nd would be kind of that professional development additional work day. So that's where that one would come in. And you can only use 48 hours is what the governor, or the commissioner, excuse me, is allowing us to do. So we can only replace 48 hours of instructional time with 48 hours of professional development time.
So how's Elkhorn doing this?
It should equal up to 48 hours. We
We
hope.
got 1, 2, 3, 4 days.
4
5,
times
6 days.
6 times 7, 6 times 6. It depends on, 6 times 7 would be 42, right?
I'm like, what in the world? I can do that math. This is probably like.
I was trying to tell him. What's he gonna do?
He needs the
He's gonna
budget.
do the 9. That's what.
That's the easy one.
I know.
It's like, we're buying now that budget stuff for me.
We,
Working on it, little by little.
there may be additional days.
Thanks.
Huh?
Flashcards.
Yeah.
As we saw in our presentation, one of the things that we know we can beef up is our technology, so there's opportunity to use more days with teacher days to do some professional development in the technology world. We can access that too, so.
Is this district, just for comparison, are they in school full-time right now? Elkhorn? Are they doing hybrid?
Pretty sure they are in school full
Okay.
time.
Okay, just
Yeah.
curious how that.
Yep.
I think the thing, though, that we also need to always keep in mind is that online learning is not, it's not gonna mimic going to school. And I think that's hard for kids to, because we've convinced them that they need to be in school 6 or 7 hours a day. When you sit down on your computer, if you're really good at something, you're gonna get it done in, 20, 25 minutes. So it's just like the kids that are doing, at the middle school that are doing the block scheduling. It's a whole different way to think, and it's really, but that's for teachers too, need that training, because it's a different way to teach. It's not just, let's talk the same amount of time and give them study hall, or it should not be. It should be multiple activities within that time frame. But I think that's what's kind of hard about this whole thing, is we've just got that stuck in our head that you go to school at 8, you get done at a certain time.
You know, and when we talked about waiting to determine Christmas, I think does that make sense to wait? I mean, do we really think anything major is going to change by then? Actually, Christmas probably may be worse, as far as family gatherings at that time.
Stakeholders I've talked to, when they've seen schools already making that decision to not go back after Christmas, have not been in favor of that at all. I mean, I haven't talked to one person that has been in favor of that. So I kind of like the approach that you guys have opted to take at this point in time. I think I just read an article, there was a new article out today that there is showing lag, students are behind in several subjects. And I know that a lot, I have a high schooler, and I know several high school parents have come and expressed that exact concern that was, in this article today is, as you're preparing kids to go to college, that's the last thing in the world you want is to find out that they're falling behind as you're sending them out the door.
Well, you already have a naturally built-in time period after Christmas, because they're off anyway until
Right, for 2 weeks.
fourth.
But how
Yeah,
long
until
after
the
the first are they?
Yeah.
They would come back to school, teachers come back to school on the 4th, and then students come back on the 5th. So, but I do think, Eric, also, our goal is to make that decision sooner rather than later. So I do think even by Thanksgiving, if we start saying things, I think we can then make that call, that just to try and give people a month to try and help them, because I do understand, it's difficult. It is very difficult when you look at parents and say, we're off for the next week. I mean, that is the hard part. I know that, I'm hoping that we don't have to do that from now until Thanksgiving, crossing my fingers, because that's,
And I'll be honest with you, I think it's much more difficult for elementary
yeah,
parents, because those kids need to have daycare. I mean, that happened
absolutely.
to our son and his wife in Chicago. They found out on Sunday night that somebody in the daycare had COVID. They had to find babysitters the next day, and they shut down immediately. And, you're scrambling to find anybody. So I think especially for our little ones, that's the difficult area. Lauren can stay home, and she'll be fine, but
Yeah.
your first grader can't be home alone. No.
Nope.
There is definitely a lot that we've learned, and we know in all of it, there's a cost-benefit analysis to everything we do. And ultimately, the best place for kids to be is school, and for the best learning to take place and the best socialization to take place. But what we're finding with the virus is that we have to really take into consideration the activity that happens outside of school and how that impacts us in school to keep everybody as safe as possible and continue learning. Because even though we may have school open, if we're missing 30% of our students or 20% of our faculty, that has a tremendous impact on everything. So that cost-benefit analysis becomes important in taking a look at the overall picture of everything. So I think this makes sense.
So along with Elkhorn, will you allow practices, extracurricular activities for staff during that week of the 30th? Because I think that's probably the first week of basketball games too.
Yeah. That's another thing that, to be quite honest with you, again, when we wrote these plans back in June and July, in our head, we thought, and I think all of us collectively thought, that when the virus hits, we're probably gonna go to tier 3, we're gonna go to tier 4, and it's gonna be over, and we're gonna have to close everything down. Well, I think, I don't know if that was a misinterpretation on our part, or just what we thought would happen, and we thought, once it hit, everybody get all these cases, but it's not happening that way, and I think that's because of some of the protocols. So, in a long-winded way to answer your question, I think we can continue to do some of those things and continue to offer those activities, which are important for kids too. We just have to be we've been very cognizant about what we allow kids to do, and making sure we communicate with our winter coaches and so forth, and impress upon them that how they manage every moment of every day of practice time, and how kids come into the locker room and how they leave the locker room makes a huge difference in the spread and what we can continue to offer. And not see kids get put into quarantine because one tested positive. So they've got to be very conscientious about that. We learned a lot over the fall. It was, in all honesty, and I question whether or not we can get past Labor Day. But it's worked.
I am surprised that we've made it this far. I mean, our kids have been to districts and state, and honestly, I would have never thought that we would have made it that far.
Yeah, and
So it's great.
a
So
huge.
kudos to, like you said, the protocol in place, because I know there are other schools that have not been so lucky.
Yeah.
And I have heard in the community that they think the school has done an
Yes.
excellent job.
Agreed.
That the administrators and you've done it. I do hear that.
Well, Well, we're trying, and kudos to the NSAA. I will give them a lot of credit because I know they've been in a tough position as well. And so I want to make sure that they've been very good, and it's just like this, as we came up on the fall championship week, they were very clear about what their expectations were. They gave great guidance to us, which I was so happy to have, because that's the one thing that we, I think we've needed from the get-go, is guidance on how everybody's gonna do everything, and so, yes, it's worked well.
So are you gonna notify the parents directly? Because I think LPS didn't do that on something, and apparently parents don't go to a website to check information.
With this change, we will notify directly, we will make a call, we will do, and tomorrow we have our update going out. So the update will go out, we will probably wait until Monday if we kind of have consensus, if that's okay with the board, just so that it's not confused with the update, and we don't have two major calls coming on the same day. So we will wait until Monday, we would send this out, but you would have the voicemail, text, and email, and then we put it on the website, we put it on Facebook, we just make sure it made it all over. We would ask our news media outlets to make sure that they also help us share the message too, and get that message out, so.
I was just gonna say that.
Technically, do you have to vote on it at board meeting to make a change in the calendar? I'm just asking, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think
I think because of the declaration we gave and
the resolution.
Okay,
the
all right.
resolution probably gives them the
Good
ability
point,
to
yeah, okay,
make these decisions.
all right.
That's what I was gonna say. All right, so, any other question about calendar discussion? Okay, I'll move on to funding. This all kind of falls under that whole COVID update. I'll try and be brief. Basically, I wanted to just provide you a little bit of an update as to where we're at on the CARES Act, and I can send this out to you as well. But the CARES Act funding totaled $338,416. Our allocation of that was $319,868. The funding had to be split with our parochial schools as well. So St. Paul's portion of that was $14,476. St. Joe's portion was $11,370. The private school allocations were based off of the Title I percentages. That was all dictated by statute and determination from the NDE down to us. That's how they decided to divide that up, which made sense. So that's all in the works. There's been several changes to that over the course of when it was first announced to where we're at now, as is everything. But we have purchased Chromebooks, Google licensing software, carrying cases, hotspot devices for families, so we're all prepared. Everything's ready to go. That's what all that money went to. And now, as we approach the second round of the GEARS funding, which is the governor's money that he has to be able to allocate that, basically how that's come out to us is that we get reimbursement of device purchases up to $400 per device. We purchased 245 Chromebook and tablets at $201 per device. So that came to us in the tune of $49,254 worth of devices. So between the CARES Act and the GEARS funding, that's helped us really get in a position where we can provide the remote learning that we need to, and kids have what they need to. So if families come to us and say, we can't connect, we have hotspots to check out to them now. So, and initially we just ordered 5 thinking, well, that'll take care of it, but when we did a survey, and because our elementary kids were taking Chromebooks home and practicing, we found out we need a lot more of those, so we continue to figure that out. So the other 2 pots of money, the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency money, because we're part of the Unified Command, and we filed a declaration with them to be part of that in the beginning of all this, and we maintain that status. We'll have access to pay for all of our PPE expenses. Now, the majority of that was free anyway, the hand sanitizer and the masks, but we've also ordered a lot of masks. We've ordered some things to provide extra PPE. All of that, when we get to the end of it, which is scheduled to be December 31st of this year, we'll be able to submit that through the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency and get reimbursed for those expenses. So I don't have a total for you on that at this point, because we still know that we are probably going to have to order some more face masks, and we want to do it to get it under that time period to be able to hand out to kids. So the last one is the Equity and Education Survey that we're in the process of, I think it's gone out, or it
Yeah,
is?
they went out. Mhm.
Okay, so it-
And there's quite a few parents, and quite a few families that have filled it out, so we're excited about that. Because we need to have everyone in our district complete it, and what it talks about is access, because it really is focusing on equitable access to the internet. And what do you have, what, speed of internet do you have, just so that we can make sure that you are able to do what we ask at home, and you are able to access it. So that money we don't know what's going to come out of that, but they have been talking that once we get that surveys complete, we will upload it onto the state site. They will have all that information, they will kind of disaggregate it for us and figure out, okay, what is the need for our district, what's the need for our community, because they're looking more at a community approach to where we maybe put up community towers for internet access that's free access for our families. So it'd be a really cool thing for our community, if we can get it, and if we can get what, kind of that big project of that equitable access, would be really, really nice,
Are
really
the
neat.
parochial schools taking this survey too?
No,
or
it's just public,
schools?
yep, but the thing is that I think parochial students would benefit just as much as our students would too, so it is really nice when they talk community-based, rather than not necessarily just school-based.
if we can share that access with them, that would be awesome
Yes,
to be able to do. So.
yep.
All right. I'll just keep moving down the line here. Tiers. I've already talked to you about how we've learned so much, and when we wrote the plans, things were different, so I'm just going to skip right into talking about the tier 3 or 4. As we do this, if we do this, I want you to know that we're approaching this very cautiously. We've had multiple discussions about, we know that the best place for kids is to be in school. It's going to be where we reach that threshold, and at what point is it necessary to do that? We've talked a lot about how staffing is going to be a big key factor in that, and that really is going to be probably the deciding factor. It's worked out great so far. Bonnie, we talked about her, I can't say enough good things about how she's maneuvered subbing. Our staff has worked really well together to cover classes for each other, so we can keep kids in school. The big question mark is, will we be able to continue to do that? So ultimately, as we look at tier 3 and we look at tier 4, we have to look at the staffing capability and whether or not we can even survive in tier 3 and for how long. So that's a big factor. If we go there, how long will we be able to stay there? And then tier 4, how long will we be there before we can bring kids back? So all of those are just factors to remember to keep in mind as we make these decisions moving forward.
And quite honestly, from now, or from tier 2 that we're at now to tier 3, really what is the major difference, and does that really even benefit? Does tier 3 even exist in our world anymore?
That's a great question.
Because we've got many.
Yeah.
Because it really is, what's the difference?
What is it? Yep.
Yeah, it's having 50% of the kids in the classroom at a time, and not sure if that's really beneficial as compared to the remote option, and having all the kids there remotely. So it goes back to the cost benefit analysis thing. Is it worth being in tier 3? Does it even really exist in our world? I mean, it sounded great in June, but is it now?
I think Nebraska City just went to that, didn't they?
They did.
They
They
did.
did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of interesting to see how that works, and
Mhm.
actually have somebody else who's doing that, so how did that work for them? And if I recall, part of the reasoning behind that was to continue to make sure that all students are actively engaged. That's why you wouldn't have them on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday. You do Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday.
Mhm.
But it's just to make sure that they were continuing to do what they needed to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is nice to have that in-person check-in, but I also know the struggle. Especially the other thing that we have to evaluate is that if we have a staff member who has young kids and they don't have any daycare, well, that staff member can say, okay, then I'm staying home Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I need to watch my child. And I'm gonna take leave with the FSCRA because I have access to that. So then we have to find a sub for them Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and how many staff? I mean, if we have asked that question for staff. I know that our administrators kind of have that information, and that is the hard part about going to tier 3 too, is we also have to look at our staffing capability to see what.
Well, and I think that has been kind of a wake-up call for the community also, that the problem isn't that our kids are all sick. The problem is we don't have subs for staff if they become sick. And
Yes.
I think that,
Well, I think also
Don't
just the
think that.
burden on teachers and, not just talking with my wife, but with other teachers, it's double work
yeah,
to
it is.
continue to do this, and, it's a lot of stress on them.
Yeah, and I would agree
And
with
so then that's just continuing, they're basically doing the same thing twice all the time. So how can you alleviate that? I don't know.
Like everything, that's one of the things that I'm glad, I know it came with plenty of criticism and debate, and people weren't necessarily happy that we didn't do the hybrid option, but I think we would have experienced some very severe
Oh,
teacher.
yeah, we don't have the staff to do that.
Right, we just don't have the staffing to be able to do it.
You'd have to have, because what did the LPS, don't they have dedicated staff for the online?
To provide curriculum for students, yes.
There's other districts that don't, and those teachers are miserable doing the hybrid.
Burned
learning.
out.
Yeah, I can't
Mhm.
imagine.
So,
Well, we have some teachers that are doing it too. I mean, they're being asked to do it, and one of the big complaints I got, and I can't disagree with this, they have to turn in attendance at 9 PM at night. Surely we could fix a system. Surely we could get these electronic people to allow a teacher to mark attendance the next morning as opposed to night.
I think we have up to 5 days. I think maybe just someone is saying 9 o'clock a day, but I do think, or know, that we have up to 5 days to turn in that attendance
There.
that teachers
She
do.
was just like, that was
Yeah.
like, it was, I mean, it was just like that was the last straw, you know?
Exactly.
I have to stay up till 9 o'clock.
And I think what's important for, questions that I've received from public and, or just even thought about it, I think this is what happened at LPS is, the initial plan in the summer was, okay, we're gonna go by the rest aisle. Well, we all know that that's not always the deal, and so in Lancaster County, the rest aisle's in the red, so according to, their original plan was then we're 100% remote if the wrist aisle gets in the red. Well, obviously because of, and I saw some stats too of just the amount of staff and students out within their district doesn't constitute necessarily closing school and going remote. So,
Jive with that,
I think we, of course, I deal with this all day long as well, and it changes, and we've got tiers within our organization, and the big question always is, what constitutes going to the next tier? And there's really no right answer, wrong answer, but if there is, and I kind of like what you're talking about on staffing, I think that's important, or obviously a huge outbreak someplace, with kids or whatever, but, staffing would be a big deal, but, and again, going back to just another comment about the calendar options, I think the sooner we can communicate these types of changes, the better, because it's not only on the parents on getting daycare, but it also puts a pretty big burden on employers in town on then having to cover for those staff members, because, I will tell you, when Lincoln School closed, and I understand why we had to do that, it was a pretty big burden on, us as an employer. I mean, we can deal with it, but it wasn't fun.
it is truly a community, this whole thing is truly a community, everything impacts the community as a whole, and so the more we can operate under that premise of thought, keeping everybody in line, the better.
And my question was, when we did that with Lincoln, we were just asking some people, it's like, okay, so why was this different than when we, last March? And a lot of response I received was similar to my family situation. I have a high schooler and a grade schooler, so they're both home. So then, you don't necessarily need daycare in those situations. So there was a lot of situations where that took care of itself for a lot of parents. But of course, not all parents have, take Aaron, for example, that would not work.
Right.
No,
So-
that would not work to leave them both home together.
We could make a good
And
movie
try
all
it.
along.
Yeah, no, that's, no. Just 2 hours yesterday was not enough.
So we're thinking about all those things as we analyze what to do with the tiers, and just trying to also factor in a little common sense as to how we approach it all. So, protocol changes, I'll just quickly say that we met with our winter activity coaches 2 days ago, and we really had a good heart-to-heart with them about their protocols moving forward. We had some great lessons learned this fall, and we think that as long as they communicate with their fall coaches about what they used and what worked and what didn't, there's some things that we can carry forward. We talked about some things we can change, but one of the biggest factors is as we move into the winter sports season and everything moving inside, how does that impact things like our fan attendance? How does that impact things like our locker room usage, mask wearing, social distancing, entering and exiting the building even? I mean, all those finite details. We began the discussion and started making a list of concerns that we need to be thinking about as we make that transition. I know the NSAA, they're focused right now on trying to wrap up the end of the fall sports season, or the fall activity season, but they will be, I'm sure, providing us guidance in the next several weeks about what they recommend or what they will be allowing and not allowing. So that'll all factor into some of our decisions as well. We have set up a conference-wide, Trailblazer conference-wide superintendent and activity director meeting on November 6th to sit down and talk about what we want to do to establish some sort of consistency within our conference. And we also know that that's a regional impact, so we're having those discussions to determine what we want to do as we move forward and transition into that winter sports season, activity season. So all that will be coming out as those decisions are made. We'll keep the public in tune as to what we're doing. We'll make sure our media stations have that information as well. So that's all right now in the process.
One other, since it's protocols and this doesn't really deal with sports, but the question I have is, who makes determinations if quarantine is needed? Is it building principals? Is it only you guys? Is it public health? Because I've seen two separate examples, with one with volleyball and then one, in grade school that were complete opposite decisions. So what, who makes, is it the building principal making the decision according to their building, whether it's staff, students, or whatever, or where is that?
Great question.
Because it just doesn't seem consistent.
Yeah.
And I understand that there's always different situations, but.
Yeah, and just when you think something sounds logical, the next thing you turn around and the next situation looks completely illogical, and that's because they're all so much different. But that is a protocol change that we just have been asked to help out with this week. Up until this week, Public Health Solutions has been making those decisions, and their decisions are all based on the contact tracing and what the person on the other end of the phone answers on the questions to that contact tracing. So Public Health Solutions can call that individual up, start asking them questions, and then that would establish how the quarantine situation was evolved. Well, in the last week, and I think it's definitely because of the increase in cases that we're seeing, Public Health Solutions has asked us to help with the contract tracing. In other words, our staff, our administrators, will be calling and helping or making determinations off of mask wearing and the things that they're seeing in school to help inform Public Health Solutions as to what quarantine decisions to make. Ultimately, we'll still come down to the recommendation of the people at Public Health Solutions. We've been assigned a single person now, which is a change that Public Health Solutions has made to our district, which I think will help things. That's our contact to go to. But we will have to help do some of that contract tracing and then also help do some of the notifications so we can expedite the process. Because one of the things that was happening is they would get involved in so many cases, they couldn't follow up with it as quickly as what needed to happen. And they had some kids that were still in school or adults that were in school that probably shouldn't have been. And that's not really anybody's fault except for just being completely overwhelmed. So they are asking us as schools to help out in that process more as we start into this winter season.
But the decisions to to quarantine do not fall on us as a district, that's still Public Health Solutions.
Yes.
We will provide them the information and consult with them, but ultimately, on the basis of what we tell them, they will be making the decision. And then they will also, if necessary, be making phone calls to families. So,
And our administrators can help with those phone calls, like if, for example, if they've tried to call this family multiple times and they can't get through, but maybe we can, we will help with the guidance, and the script that we will use is on the basis of recommendation from Public Health Solutions. It's not from us. This is what Public Health Solutions is telling us that your family or your child needs to do.
I
So
can't wait till this is over.
I can't either.
You know,
They can't
this
either.
is not what our educators signed
Nope.
up to do.
No.
I want to get back to curriculum work.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be
I think
nice?
Public Health Solutions would like to get back to like public
Well,
health
are they
outside
like- Exactly.
of viruses.
I can't imagine how overwhelmed they are.
They're
I mean,
miserable.
I mean, because it's not,
They're miserable.
you know.
So I assume that other districts are being asked to have a person to
Yes.
help with this. That's hopefully gonna alleviate a lot of.
I will tell you though, I think it will be nice having one contact person too, because before we had multiple people calling all of our families. And so you have this contact tracer that did this contact tracer, and that consistency piece. Just because, again, maybe I was getting different stories or not hearing everything, and so it will be nice to have one person. And we've already started utilizing her and hoping she doesn't get overwhelmed. We might have to send her some cake and, chocolate every few weeks.
yeah,
Yes.
so that is a protocol change. Thanks for asking the question. The last thing I have for you is, unless there's any more questions on COVID, we'll switch gears completely. Okay. We have a diode proposal that is, and I don't know if you have this or not, so I can send it out to you, but just in preparation for approval. This will upgrade the security system here at the administrative building to make both doors, have to give us control over access entry. We will have a camera on this door over here, so the inside door will be locked, and anybody that wants to come in will have to buzz in unless they have a fob or we give them entry, and then so we'll operate the same as every other building in the district now. So that proposal is $6,661, but it outfits our administrative building with the security features that have been recommended to us, and brings an upgrade to the access control cameras and proper door controls. I'll just keep that brief, but I'll send this out to you.
So like meetings like now, are you able to control it to be open to the public and?
Absolutely. And so that's, even with the city meetings too, we will make sure that the building is open.
We are looking at, we met with Diode the other day, and we're looking at having them come out with a proposal in the next couple of weeks to discuss ideas and things that we've been in discussion about security and safety wise for the district as a whole. So we'll be inviting the Buildings and Grounds Committee in when we get that all organized. We'll notify you of that in the near future.
This is the proper time for public questions and comments on any topic related to agenda items. Seeing no people, well, other than, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
A
Second.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Your votes, please. All those in
Yes.
favor? Okay.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Oh, I didn't say it in public session, but as a reminder, I'll be gone